Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Mercedes and today we are going to go over every book I have read in August. I guess you could say I went a little off the rails this month when it comes to the number of books I have consumed because I am right at 20 books for the month of August. What's funny about that is somewhere around like the second week mark into this month, I felt like I was having a book slump. I was like, oh no, something's happening to me. I don't want to read. Nothing sounds good. And I guess something switched inside of me and was like, no ma'am, we will not allow this to happen. And then I just went into overdrive and I have read so many books this month. I think this might be the biggest number of books I have read in a month all year. As always, reading is subjective. I'm going to go through each book I've read, give you a little bit of my thoughts and my opinions and my final star rating. Just because I feel a certain way about a book doesn't mean that you will feel the same way. That's totally okay. That's the beauty of reading. I do read a lot of different genres. I read fantasy, thriller, and romance, and I feel like this month I did do a good job at mixing all of the genres. Just kidding. I've only read one fantasy this month. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the reason why you clicked on this video, the books. In no particular order, I just have a stack right in front of me. I'm just going to grab from the top and go. We're starting with quite a big one. This was a 5-star read for me. This is Have You Seen Sarah Baker by T.A. Cruz. This is a thriller suspense slash horror. I think he does classify this as a horror. There are some pretty gruesome parts within this book. This book has set a precedence for all other thriller books I have read this month. What makes something a 5-star thriller read for me is that the suspense is equal all throughout the book, and I feel like this book definitely had that. I even made a murder board when I was reading this book. Here it is. I still have it. I don't want to take it down. Don't look too closely. You are risking yourself of spoilers. This book is about a high school teacher who does go missing, and you follow along the sheriff and the deputies trying to figure out what happened to Sarah Baker and if they can locate her in time. You do flip back and forth between point of views of Sarah Baker and then point of views of the active case. The way this book is just so complex, and the way that every character, like, you can palpably feel them within the book, if that makes sense. Like, everyone felt like they could have been a real person. The character development was consistent all throughout the book, and I don't know, I just love this book so much. I gave it 5 stars and I would highly recommend this one. Next, I have an arc of Daydream. I don't have the published version, but it is now released. I feel like I need to hold it like this so you can see the whole cover of it. So I'm going to do that. This is the 3rd book in the Maple Hill series. I liked Icebreakers. I loved Wildfire, and then you get Daydream, which is Henry's story. If you read the first book, Icebreaker, you fall in love with Henry and you are just so desperate for his book. And then you get his book. And I liked this story. I found the main female character to be really delightful, and I liked her character and her character's journey and her character development. I liked Henry. Henry's great. I just think this book is a little long, and I hate to say that when it comes to romance books because I am here for a good plot, but I don't know, I felt like this was a little long-winded. This is maybe my least favorite of the 3. I did enjoy the storyline overall. I just wish it was maybe 100 pages shorter, and I hate to say that I do, but it is how I feel and I have to be honest. If I was to rank the Maple Hill series in order from my most favorite to least favorite, it would be Wildfire, Daydream, and then Icebreakers. So I'm right in the middle with this book. I don't know, I'm pretty neutral about it. Next we have Ghost Eater by Clay McLeod Chapman. I feel like I'm saying his middle name wrong. McLeod? I always feel like I'm saying an author's name wrong. I found this book in Barnes & Noble. I went there one day. It was in the horror section, and look at the cover. Are you joking? The cover looks terrifying, and I am on the hunt and still hunting for a super terrifying, eerie, gross book. I don't know, it's what my Halloween heart wants this year, and I thought maybe that this would deliver, and it didn't. it didn't deliver that. I think where this book was going had a lot of potential, but then the plot just got a little too blurry for me, and there was just so many things happening in the book that just didn't contribute to the overall plot of the book. The book is about a friend group who loses one of their friends, and the friend who passed away is like the leader of this group. Like, he was the core person keeping everyone together. When he passed away, it seemed like he was heavily dealing with addiction, and one of his best friends, also someone who he was romantically involved with off and on all throughout their relationship, was so deeply struck by the sudden death of her BFFL, and she went on this journey to try to find him again, which the premise of that sounds good. And there were some parts of this book that were super unsettling and that were really gross, but I wish that that would have stayed consistent throughout the whole book. I rated this book a 3.5. The 5 is a sympathy point because I did go on Goodreads and I did read the reviews, and a lot of people say that this is a really good journey on grief and addiction and like trying to overcome that or battling that. And while I can see where they're coming from, I just didn't feel that wholeheartedly when I was reading it, so I would give this book a 3.5 and would maybe recommend it. Next we have Little Stranger by Lee Rivers. This is a dark taboo romance. It's so unhinged. It's so unhinged. It's a short little read, and this is one of the books that is just meant to be mind-numbing. There's not a lot of plot happening in this book, or the plot is how unhinged the main male character is. This is about two foster siblings who start to blur the line of what's appropriate to do with your foster siblings, and one of them, Malachi, the main male character, becomes obsessed, and really he was obsessed from the moment that he saw Olivia, who is the main female character. Something really unhinged happened with Malachi and Olivia. Malachi gets sent to jail. When he's released 8 years later, he is still obsessed with Olivia, but what happens when you mix that obsession with revenge? That's the second part of this book, and let me tell you, it was so unhinged, girl. I enjoyed it for what it was. This book definitely did get my adrenaline pumping, and I would recommend it, but maybe if you like this genre, if you like a dark taboo romance, I think that this is like a good, quick, thrilling read. Next, I actually have another dark taboo romance, which is Green Light by Jessie Hall. I love Jessie Hall. This is one of her newest releases, and this book is like on par with my favorite by her. So my favorite by her is Kid. I have it up here. These are like some of my all-time favorite books. So we have Kid, and then we have Green Light. It was a close contender. I still think Kid is #1 for me, but then we have Green Light. This book starts off guns blazing. Like, it starts off, we're blushing, we're kicking our feet in this weird, very spicy, unhinged way, and then you get to chapter 2. And that's how you know that it's really gonna go down within this book. Shane is morally gray, for sure. He has daddy issues and mommy issues and all of the issues, but deep down, all he wants is love and revenge and Montana. Montana is also on a mission of her own, and she's trying to correct a wrong that was done in her life. So there's a lot going on within this plot, and it's so good. I love this book so much. I would recommend it if you are into this genre. Next, I'll give you the only fantasy book that I read, or should I say romantasy, and that's Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. She is a little thick one. I did listen to this on Audible, and I loved the audio version. This is a romantasy that is a little bit more of an adventure based. So the main characters are on what feels like a scavenger hunt. I don't remember if they call it a scavenger hunt within the book, but it's like a game. They're playing a game and they need to go out into the world to find certain pieces. Tension, the banter, the plot, all of it I think was done so well. They all balance each other out so perfectly, because I feel like sometimes in romantasies the plot can get lost behind the romance, and I don't feel that way. Although the romance was a big driving factor of the plot, because you have Prince Envy, who is one of the princes of hell, who thrives on making people jealous. To restore his power, he needs to feed on people's jealousy. One of the ways he does that is to make the main female character jealous, and I'll let you only imagine what he does in order to do that. There is a second book coming out soon, and I can't wait to read it. I would recommend this book, and also I would recommend the audio. How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. This was my first Grady Hendrix book I have read, and I didn't enjoy it. I actually did DNF this book. So if you are familiar with Grady Hendrix, please answer this question for me. I could probably Google it and find out, but I want to know from you. Is Grady Hendrix writing supposed to be something that's a little bit more on the comical side? Because if so, and if I would have gone into this book knowing that, maybe I would have liked it differently. But I also thought this was a thriller. There is like this creepy aspect happening in the house, How to Sell a Haunted House, but it's really not even that creepy. It's not even really that suspenseful. The first half of the book is just the two siblings arguing with each other. That's it. And the main female character was the only reason I wanted to keep reading the plot, but then she had this weird personality shift, and then I just simply didn't care to continue this book. So I DNF'd it. Maybe you would like it. I don't know. It wasn't for me. Next we have Shadows by Kristen Proby. This is a Bayou magic novel, and this is actually a perfect book for the upcoming fall. Witchy vibes meets a true crime. It's also a romantic suspense. This is actually the first book in what I believe is a trilogy. I have the two other books. Let me grab them. Two other books is Serendipity and Spells, but I haven't read these two yet. I'm definitely going to this upcoming fall season. I liked this book. I did listen to it on audio. The audio is around like 4 or 5 hours, so it's a short listen. In this book, you have a serial killer who's going around unaliving women, and the ghosts from those women are haunting one of the witches in the area, trying to get her to help solve what's happening to these women. Also at the same time, Brielle, who is the main witch in this story, meets Cass or Cassian, and he is new to the area. This book takes place in New Orleans. Cass is actually a detective, and he's aware of these killings happening in the area, so it's almost like she's the middle person. Like the ghosts are coming to her, she's going to Cass, and they're all trying to figure out what's happening. There is like a waft of spice, but it's nothing like super heavy or really intense. I did like this book, and I would recommend it. This next book is definitely one of the more creepy books I have read all month, and that is Stolen Tongues by Felix Blackwell. This book does lean onto the paranormal side, about the life beyond, trying to come back to the real world, maybe with some not some good intentions, and trying to really mess some stuff up. I did start this book and finished it in the same day. I could not put it down. It was just so bingeable. The ending of the book was a little lackluster. The build up and the suspense, it was also good, and then the ending was just all right. I would give it 4 stars. I would still recommend it because of the way it just made me so unsettled and how eerie it was, but the ending wasn't my favorite. Speaking of books that made me unsettled, Tender as a Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. I didn't know what to expect when I read this book. I found it in the horror section, but what's interesting is what's interesting is it's actually a dystopian horror novel, and I just wasn't expecting that. And I go into books blind. I prefer it that way. And I don't know, I did not expect the plot of this book to be the plot of this book. It is a short read. It's around 200 pages, but it is definitely one of those books that is going to make you think. You're going to be unsettled when you're reading this book. I don't know not one person who has read this book and was like, yeah, that's a good book. Every person who I've heard talk about this book was like, what the hell was this? This is so weird and this is so unsettling, but why did I love it? You know, I don't even know how to describe it, girl. This is a dystopian reality about where the meat being consumed in this world isn't animal meat. Well, it's animal meat, but it's like an animal that you wouldn't want the animal to be, if you know what I'm saying. And it follows the main male character who is going through this meat factory. He works there, and you can tell that he's not really down for it. You know, he's really conflicted within his morals, and you follow him along. And the ending is so infuriating. I can never say that word right. That's why I had to like kind of slow it down when I said it. Infuriating. Infuriating. It just sounds wrong. Anyway, I don't know if I would recommend this book. This book is definitely not for everybody. The next book I have is Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. This is a 5-star read or 5-star listen. I did listen to it on audio, and I would probably recommend the audio more than the actual physical book, because this is about a podcast, a true crime podcast, and the aspect of the podcast happening on the audio was super cool. And I think what made this book even better, I was addicted to the audio version of this book. It is about a true crime podcast who's trying to solve a cold case, and the main female character, Lucy, finds herself in the center of all of this because she was actually the only suspect within the cold case that the true crime podcast is trying to solve. There is also an aspect of romance happening in this plot. I don't know if you can classify it as a romantic suspense. I didn't see it listed as one, but this book has also another waft of spice, nothing too crazy, and I really enjoyed this book. I would recommend this one. The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is my first Riley Sager book, and I enjoyed it. I'm not crazy about it. I don't think it's anything revolutionary. I thought the beginning to the middle into the end was a little slow. The ending was definitely what made this book. If the ending was lackluster, I would have hated this book. The book is about Kit, who is the main female character who is assigned as the new caregiver to someone who was said to have murdered her whole family. And you go on the journey of like discovering the truth of what actually happened that night, and it was a little slow for me in the beginning. The ending definitely tied it all together. I already told you that. I would maybe recommend this book. Not my favorite, but it was okay. Lights Out by Navessa Allen. This actually might be one of my favorite dark romance books, because although it's a dark romance, there's also like this consensual, lighthearted aspect of the book, which I really appreciate. You know, dark romance can go off the rails, okay? But there's something nice about both parties consenting to what's happening. This is a stalker romance, and how this comes to be is because the main female character follows the main male character on social media, where the main male character posts these masked man thirst traps. And Allie is so into it. She is here for it, and she comments on every one of his videos. She is obsessed with this man until one day, Josh realizes he knows Allie. And he realizes that Allie has this kink of being stalked and masked men and all of these things. And he's thinking like, what would happen if I made her dreams come true? I would recommend this book. We're getting to the last 4 books, and then I have 3 audiobooks that I need to tell you about, so let me speed this on. We have Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I didn't like this book. I didn't. I found it to be super lackluster, very boring, very predictable. I wouldn't recommend it. It is popular. People love this book. I think if you were just beginning your thriller journey, you would have probably liked this more than I did. I just didn't enjoy it. Next, we have It Never Was by Ivy Darling. There is a trigger warning at the beginning of this book that is super important that you read, because it kind of is a little descriptive. In the book, you are following along the main female character, Ryan, as she navigates adulthood with no support, and she's like really thrown to the wolves at a really young age. And she's also in a very unhealthy, abusive relationship, and she just has all of this pressure on her that she's just trying to make it by. She's trying to survive. It's definitely a hard emotional read. I would recommend it. Next, we have the first 2 books of the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. Flawless is the first book. I thought this book was okay. It's a small town enemies to lover romance. I needed the enemies to lovers to be a little bit more enemies. Rhett is the main male character in this book. He's still a little too much of a gentleman, you know? Like, he's not really, like, there was no enemies to lovers. It was giving more of a forbidden romance, in my opinion, and I think it was just pretty standard. Until we get to Heartless, this book is where it is at. I love this book so much. This is the special edition cover of Heartless, and I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to annotate in it, that I went and got the republished version of, and I'm now going back through and annotating it, which I guess could count as a reread. I have never done that before, where I have finished a book, immediately got the book so I can annotate in it, and I'm going through and rereading it right after I finished it. I think the character development and the depth to all of the characters was so nice. This I would say is like a love at first sight, but also kind of like a forbidden romance. But the more you read, the more you can tell Cade, who is the main male character, becomes more and more unhinged. And he's like, it's like harder for him to fight how he actually feels about Willa, who is the main female character, and I think they just balanced each other out so perfectly, and the banter was just so good. I love this book so much. This is a 6-star read. I haven't read the rest of the Chestnut Springs series yet, but I'm going to finish it in the month of September, so fear not. I listened to 3 books on audio, and I don't have the physical copy of the books. 2 of these books are Audible exclusives, meaning that they only exist in the audio form. And the first one is A Welcome Reunion, which is the novella that follows after A Perfect Child by Lucinda Berry. So you do have to read A Perfect Child, which I loved. You have to read that first. And then the novella is just to kind of like, I guess, tie up everything that happens like in the future, many years down the road. And I will say, and the only thing I will say about it is that it was all deserved and justified, and I think it was like the cherry on top. Another novella I listened to was actually another suspenseful novella. It's called How It Was by Rachel Housel Hall. And I would say that, like, if you just want something to listen to that's quick and you don't necessarily want to start a whole book, I think the audiobook is only like 2.5 hours. If you listen to it at 1.5 speed, it's only like 1 hour and 40 minutes. This audiobook is like, the ending was just so perfect. Like, the ending was the perfect outcome. And the last audiobook I listened to was Incidents Around the House by Josh Mallerman. I had bigger expectations for this book. I wanted to love it more than I did. I gave it 3.5 stars. Unique about this book, and really unique about the audiobook, is that it is told through an 8-year-old little girl's point of view. In the audiobook, the narrator is narrating in a child's voice, which I thought was so cool, and it adds to this layer of like, ooh, this is kind of creepy. But once we got like halfway through the book, I felt like we should have had another POV, like from the mom or the dad or the grandma. Like, I felt like someone else's POV would have added what I felt like this book was missing. Because, you know, a child is kind of oblivious. They are aware of the things happening around them, but they don't know like the full impact of what's happening. And I feel like if there was an adult point of view, like, it would have been just chef's kisses, and I craved that within the storyline, and I didn't like how it ended at all. So I gave it 3.5. People love this book. I felt okay about this book. Oh my god, I feel like I've been yapping for forever, girl. You know how hard my brain has to work to remember all of these books? How many life memories I've had to dump off out of the storage of my brain so I can remember all of the stuff happening in these books? Oh, girl, it's crazy. There you have it, girl. Those are all of the books I have read in the month of August. I have definitely put in the work this month. Now I want to know how many books you read this month and what has been your favorite read for this month. And please know, however many books you've read this month, that is great. It's not a competition. That's all I have for you today. Okay, bye. Love you.